So I hope everyone started reading newspaper. I've given you a brief intro of how to start with the newspaper, and I also given a list of the important current affairs of the last 1 week. So this week, what we are doing is that first of all, I will be giving a list of some important current affairs of this week. I will also be sharing that in your group also through your mentor. So today's session we will discuss about 4 to 5 important current affairs which happened in the last 1 week, which you will be needing in the coming years. Okay, so some petty small current affairs which you might not need that much, I've skipped that you can Google and find it yourself. The important areas which you should read again and again and which you need some clarity, I have discussed on that today. Okay, and also I will be dealing with one editorial of the last week. Okay, along with the current affairs, uh, I will be selecting one article, one editorial, and we will be discussing how to read it effectively, how to mark the important points, and how to make the note of it. So that will be our agenda for today. First of all, we will discuss in between when that current affairs come, we will discuss the newspaper also. Okay, am I clear up to now? Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
So I will share the slide now, okay? So these are the important current affairs of the last 1 week, okay? There will be something, first of all, I will just give a brief intro of these things, then we will move to the main article, which need further discussion. The first one is India-Bhutan relationship, okay? That is very important for India as far as Bhutan is concerned because Bhutan is an immediate neighbor to us. Okay, Bhutan is an immediate neighbor to us and it shares somewhat a porous border with India. That's why the Bhutan-India relationship is something which we should discuss and we will be discussing in detail about that. Then we will be having an Indian space policy which came in the last week or so, and it has certain additions how the work between in the Indian space sector is divided to different sectors. Then something called as MPC or Monetary Policy Committee. It is related to RBI. What is an MPC? What is its function? What do you mean by policy rates? We will be discussing that also in detail. Then there was a news article regarding media freedom. A media channel from Kerala was banned by the union government and the case was in Supreme Court. And Supreme Court came up with a judgment giving back life to that news channel. Okay, so that was in news, but we should not go in too detail about that. Why? Because things which are against the government. See, you guys are going to be UPSC officers or civil servants. What is your first job? You have to implement what the government is coming up with. For example, if government is coming up with new policies, it is your duty to implement them. So you should not have a impression to the UPSC that you are against the government. So it is better if you leave areas which are that against the government. That doesn't mean that you have to support everything which the government says, but you have to have a balanced opinion. So regarding the media freedom, there is certain things which are criticized of the government. We should not go into that detail. But one thing with this media freedom which you should understand is what do you mean by a sealed cover? Because a sealed cover means whenever there is a discussion or whenever there is something happening in the court, the government have a tendency that they will say this is really important, this is nationally important, so we cannot share it to anybody else. It will be visible just to the judge. It will be given a sealed cover. It's called a sealed cover jurisprudence. In that, the judge will examine the cover and will give a judgment. Only the government and that judge will be knowing what is in the seal. Even the party which is aggrieved will not be knowing what is in the sealed cover. So you should understand in detail about the sealed cover. Okay. That you have to understand, and in that freedom, you have to understand which all articles are involved. Okay. The first three we will be discussing in detail in the session. Okay. Then we have something called as UN World Water Conference. What is the conference? What does it talk about? What is its agenda? You have to have a brief idea. Okay, nothing in detail, but a small understanding. A new bill was introduced in the parliament called as Aquaculture Bill. Just Google and find out what are the main ideas. Just a brief understanding will do. We will discuss if the bill is passed in both the houses. We will discuss after that. Just understand what does this bill talk about, and just understand how a bill is being introduced in the parliament, etc. Then next important news is regarding NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Okay, in this, why it was in news? Because it is actually news every day because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Actually, the Ukraine conflict, Russia-Ukraine conflict started because Russia was fearful that Ukraine might join NATO. That means NATO will come to the neighbor to Russia. That's why actually one of the main reasons of Russia-Ukraine conflict was that. So why NATO was in this week was especially because Finland joined NATO. That's why NATO was in news. So what you have to do is that just briefly understand what is NATO, why it was formed. Okay, the main ideology of NATO, which is called as collective responsibility. Understand what is it? When NATO was formed, its objective, what are the conditions to join NATO, etc. Just understand. Okay. Then there was news about World Bank and Asian Development Bank because they gave about growth prospectus of India, how India will be growing in the coming fiscals. Okay, so we will be discussing about World Bank, what is the advantage of, what is the importance of World Bank. Okay, so that we will discuss. India-Japan news was also there because one of the important leaders of Japan visited India. That is why that was in the news. There was an article related to government and rare disease. Understand what do you mean by a rare disease, okay? And how do governments support rare disease? Rare disease means that won't be, not everyone will be having that disease. Okay, that's why it is called as a rare disease. So, what are the problems associated with the rare disease? Okay, just understand that. Then there is something called as a new foreign trade policy, which is extremely important. We will be discussing in detail, and we will be discussing an editorial also of this. Okay, then what do you mean by carbon? This is an important part because in the coming years you will be knowing whatever the climate change is happening and around, how the temperatures are increasing, how the floods, frequent floods are happening. There is something called as heat wave which is happening, cloud bursts. So these are all a result of climate change. It has direct related with carbon emissions. So then there was news regarding OPEC 3 plus. OPEC plus is an international institution. Understand what is the objective of the institution, main countries. OPEC plus actually involves the consortium of the major oil exporting countries of the world. Why it was in news? Because they have decided to halt the production of petroleum. So what happens when the petroleum production is reduced? When it is reduced in the market, the supply of oil reduces. So as when the supply reduces, the price goes up. So what happens? Countries like India, China, etc., which import so much of amount of oil, will find it really difficult because we have to shell more money to get petroleum products. So that's why OPEC plus was in use. Then there was something called as LIGO India, which was in news, especially today in today's newspaper, because the Union Cabinet has allowed the construction in India, especially in Maharashtra. So what is LIGO India? LIGO, what does it deal with? We will discuss that in detail. This is just a brief intro of the important current affairs which happened this week. Okay. Now you have to understand where does this come. Okay. Why it is important? See, India-Bhutan relationship, India-Japan relationship. This both come in GS paper 2, especially international relations. Okay. Then NATO, OPEC plus, UN World Conference, these all we can connect to GS paper 2. Okay, MPC and policy rate, Indian space policy, new foreign trade policy, okay, carbon emissions, these are even World Bank and Asian Development Bank, we can come in GS paper 3 because this is related to economics, this is related to environment, foreign trade policy is trade, that also comes in GS paper 3. Media freedom as such, we will discuss in politics. A bill which is introduced in the parliament comes in politics. So that is also GS paper 2. Government and rare diseases, which comes in health and government policy, this also comes in GS paper 2. So what we have to understand that in newspaper, majority of the news will be from GS paper 2 and GS paper. We have had a brief intro of the syllabus in the last session. If anybody has missed it, do go and visit that. Okay, you will understand the brief, difference of the syllabus: GS paper 1, GS paper 2, GS paper 3, and GS paper 4. And GS paper 1, which talks about history and geography, comes very less in the news actually. So whenever it comes, we have to take note of it. Otherwise, the majority of the articles will be from GS paper 1, GS paper 2, and GS paper. First of all, when we discuss a relationship between two countries, especially when India is involved, the first and foremost thing we should note is that whether it is a neighbor. There is a famous quote saying that you can select your friends, but you can never select your neighbors. Sometimes the person which you don't like at all can come as a neighbor to you. You cannot do anything. Okay, that is one thing. So first of all, when a relation, for example, it is an India-USA relationship or India-USA, you should understand whether USA is a neighbor or USA is not a neighbor, but Bhutan is a neighbor. And when a relation comes, especially international relation, it comes in GS paper 2, okay, IA, which means international relations. So first of all, when an article comes, you should understand why this thing coming in. Why India, Bhutan news is international. Why? Because the Bhutan king visited India. I will not suggest you should remember the name of the king in detail, because to understand the name of the king of especially the Southeast Asian countries, etc., it is very difficult to pronounce and understand. If you by heart it is very good, but I won't suggest to learn it completely until and unless you are preparing for state level PSC exams or state level exams. You might need it. Otherwise, for UPSC, the name of the king seldom has. So it is better to understand the Bhutan king or the head of the Bhutan state visited. Okay, so you should understand when Bhutan comes to India, Bhutan is an immediate neighbor. So we will be having some sort of relationship between. And we must know that India is a very big country, a bit more powerful than Bhutan. Okay, Bhutan is a small Himalayan state. It is something called as a land-linked country. Okay, land-linked country. Actually, there are different usages. We also call as landlocked country. But landlocked means gives some kind of a negative connotations to that. So we will, in international relations, to have a better way of saying, we will say it is a land-linked country. Okay, it is actually sandwiched between two superpowers of India and China. Okay, it is between India and China. So this is India. You can see there's a very big country, right? We have Pakistan here, we have Afghanistan here, okay, we have Nepal here. Because students might have a confusion regarding the position of Nepal and position of Bhutan. Actually, I used to have confusion. Even now, whenever I don't revise, I will somehow like, sometimes I used to get confused whether it's where Nepal and where Bhutan is. You should understand Bhutan comes in the right part. Okay. This what is Bhutan. Just understand from where, which part of India is Bhutan. Bhutan is to the northeastern part of India. Okay. You have to know which are the neighboring states in India of Bhutan. So you have to understand you have China here, you have Nepal here, but Nepal and Bhutan don't share a border because we have something called as a chicken neck of India in between Bhutan and Nepal. Okay, so this is the location of Bhutan. And other neighbors of India, you have to know, you have Bangladesh here, you have Sri Lanka here, you have Pakistan here. Actually, in the top part, we used to have Afghanistan and an area which is presently called as Pak-occupied Kashmir. Okay, that's why we are not having a direct link to Afghanistan, otherwise we will be having a direct connection with Afghanistan. Okay, so just we will discuss what are the important areas. Okay, discussed by India and Bhutan when the Bhutan king visited India. You have to understand one thing. When it is said that the Bhutan king visited India, you should not assume that the Bhutan king came by himself only. There will be a big delegation coming in. There will be ministers of state, and there will be people of business oriented people. Businessmen, the different business delegations will be there. They will also be having discussions simultaneous to what the president or what are the head of the states are having. Okay, so they will be discussing different things. Okay, and finally the end result, the picture or the last thing will be signed by the head of. For example, sometimes it can be the president of India, sometimes it can be the prime minister of India. Okay, so the discussion. So what are the areas that were discussed between India and Bhutan? The last meeting or the meeting which just happened. The first and foremost thing is that India used to give financial support in the form of credit, means giving support, financial support. So the Indian government extended the lines of credit which was given to Bhutan for their various development projects. For example, just understand, sometimes Bhutan will be developing a railway project. Sometimes Bhutan will be developing a new parliament. Sometimes government can support it. Indian government will support it by giving different credits. Okay, line of credit. Sometimes if India pledged to give 1 million credit, doesn't believe that India will be giving 1 million rupees just like that. It will be a stage. Maybe they will be giving 1 million in a span of 10 years. Okay, that means it will be given little by little unless the project is completed. So the government has decided to increase the credit. Okay, I'm not going in too detail about what are the areas the credit is given, because that you don't need until and unless you are a UPSC optional student. For GS, which we are discussing now, for them and mains, this is enough. So India gives credit to Bhutan. That you should understand, because if you compare India and Bhutan, the powerful country, the economically superior country, the politically superior country will be India. So India will be providing the line of credit to Bhutan. The second important thing is two hydropower projects, Sankosh and Punasangchu, are finalized by India and Bhutan. The main relationship between India and Bhutan revolves around hydropower. Why? Because Bhutan is a Himalayan country. So many rivers which flow to India flow from Bhutan. Okay, so what happens when that river flows and enters India? As these areas, as it is mountainous, there is high chance to produce electricity from water, because the water will be falling down. That will rotate the turbines and electricity is produced. So what happens? India invests in the hydropower projects in Bhutan and get electricity at a subsidized rate from Bhutan. So that means it will be less costly for India to import, hydroelectricity from Bhutan than constructing in India. Okay, so the main relationship between India and Bhutan revolves around the hydropower. So two new hydropower projects were being commissioned between India and Bhutan, and also regarding the tariffs. That means I told you India gets electricity in a subsidized rate from Bhutan. So the tariff was considered as low by many Bhutanese people. So now there is a discussion going on to increase the tariff so that more money will be given to the Bhutan. Then the areas which discuss between India and Bhutan is something called as checkpoints. Hope you know what do you mean by checkpoint. If you used to travel between states, especially during the COVID times, you might be knowing what a checkpoint is. In the border of states, there will be one police checkpoint of, for example, you are crossing from Karnataka to Tamil Nadu. You have a border in between. So when you are moving to Tamil Nadu from Karnataka, you will be first having a checkpoint at Karnataka. You will be scanned. You will be thoroughly checked. Your COVID certificate, your vaccination certificate will be checked. And then you enter Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, there will be another checkpost of the Tamil Nadu police. If it is a forest area, there will be checkposts by forest people and also the excise people. So that means there will be around 3 plus 3, 6 checkpoints you have to cross. Just imagine how much time is being wasted. Integrated checkpoints mean that there will be one checkpoint of both the people in which you will be checked simultaneously. That means less time, there won't be huge queue of vehicles, things will move fast. So there was discussion about integrated checkpoints between India and Bhutan, and also there was discussion for having third-party checkpoints. That means if some product has to be sent to different other countries than these two countries, there is possibility of discussion on that one. So that were areas which we discussed. So based on the discussion, there were some future areas or some future part which both of the countries are interested. That is one called as space research. In one area in which India dominates up to some extent, you can say technology-wise, an area where India somehow is on par with countries such as USA, China, Russia, France is related to space. You might know India have a very robust system of sending satellites to space, which very few countries have. Okay. That is one area where Bhutan and India are going to have future collaboration and also skilling, because Bhutan presently is having younger generation similar to what India is having. So the skilling of this population is extremely important. So these are the areas which were discussed and were in the open. But this one area, this is actually the reason why the India-Bhutan relationship was in the headlines. Just before India visit, one of the leading ministers of Bhutan told that the discussion between China and Bhutan related to an area called as Doklam is progressing. Those who have read newspapers in the last 1 to 2 years, you might be knowing there was a standoff between India and China in Doklam. Actually, Doklam is a tri-junction. That means joined by 3 people: China, Bhutan, and India. So there was discussion between the border areas of China and Bhutan going on. So India is actually very much concerned about this development because it is an immediate neighbor to India, and India and China doesn't share a very robust and friendly relationship. So these are the areas which were discussed. Okay. So when you read a newspaper, this will be the thing which will be given in the news article. So you'll be reading that, you will be thinking, okay, I know, so what is happening between India and Bhutan, and you will know. But for UPSC, what we have to do, in addition to newspaper reading, is to have some background knowledge. So India, Bhutan, this much news will be in the article, you will be read and you understand it, not the important points finish. But when you go to the UPSC or when you go for the exam, the first question might come: India-Bhutan relationship is based on the Treaty of Friendship which was signed in 1949 or 1950. So you will be first you will be thinking, okay, where does this come from? I've not read that in the newspaper. Very few times such information will be coming in the newspaper. So what we have to do is that when we read whatever news, we read it quickly and just have a little bit deep research to that. If it is international relation, if it is related to environment, if it is related to economy, whatever it is, have a bit of extra. Just Google it, because previously, if you take the thing maybe 6 to 7 years before, such kind of information to get will be really difficult. You have to go to the library, you have to get the book, read, understand. But now you have it in your fingertips. Take your mobile phone or smartphone, take out your laptop, just Google and find out. So when you deal with a relationship, we have to understand the history. What is the history between these two countries? Are these countries were having some issues previously and now they are doing good, or they are having good relations from the past? What are the areas of interest? What are the areas of conflict? Okay, that is things which you should always understand between two countries. What is it? The areas of interest. That means what are the areas in which both the countries share equal ideas? Then of course there will be areas of conflict. And you should always have an idea of for how this relationship can be taken in a good spirit as we move forward. Am I clear up to now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we will discuss a bit more of India-Bhutan relationship. Okay. The history of it. So how did the relation between India and Bhutan start? The relationship started from the time about 1600 or 1700. From the later part of 1700, Britain is having a huge saying. Yeah, actually, okay, from 1857, the crown directly was ruling India. So what happened in 1910? Bhutan was brought under British, and it was considered as a protectorate of the Britain. It was not included with the Indian territory, but it was considered as a protectorate from 19. From 1910 onwards, Bhutan's foreign policy were controlled by the British. So what happened when the British left India in 1947? The relations somewhat happened in the same way between India and Bhutan. The major foreign policy was guided by India, and there was a treaty, Indo-Bhutan Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1947. And based on this treaty, the relationship between Bhutan and India was formed. And based on that, the foreign policy of Bhutan, that means how the relation of Bhutan could happen with other foreign countries. India used to have a say in that. So as the country progressed, as the Bhutan became economically a bit more powerful, as a new generation got more education, they went out, studied, and they came back to Bhutan. The people felt that India are getting or involved too much in the internal politics of Bhutan, and the time has come that it should be rejigged. So what happened in 2007? This treaty, Indo-Bhutan Peace Treaty, was renegotiated, and their provisions were included to encourage Bhutan's sovereignty. That means the involvement of India in the foreign policy of Bhutan was reduced. That means it abolished the need to take India's guidance on foreign policy of Bhutan. So from 2007, the foreign policy of Bhutan was not connected with India. India used to have you can say, at least on paper, India do not have any say in the foreign policy of Bhutan. So that's how our history started. Okay. Am I clear up to now? Guys, do respond. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So why? Why Bhutan is important to India? Or you can say areas of interest or areas of cooperation, we can say. Bhutan, as I already shared you the map. Okay. In the map, you see Bhutan shares a border with India, especially with four Indian states of Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, West Bengal, and Sikkim. That means a part of northeast India or northeastern part of India. Four states. This is important. Do note down. You can get it for prelims in the map area. Okay. So whenever you discuss, whenever you have, work, whenever you work for map actually, I always suggest you should have a small book, not a big book, a small book, ruled or unruled up to your wish, and you can give the heading of map. It is extremely important, guys. So I will be discussing 5 minutes of how to effectively use the map work. So I already told you in the last class that you should buy an atlas. Oxford or Orange Black Swan, which is up to your wish. Do buy atlas as soon as possible. You need it for geography, you need it for economics, you need it for IR, you need it for map work, you need it. So take out atlas. Okay, you have to have an atlas and you should have a map. So from the next week onwards, I will be giving you in the final slide, I will be giving countries in news or places in news. And as an assignment, you have to develop a book or a note of. I will tell you how. So for example, I'm giving you Bhutan as an assignment for map. So what you have to do, take out your atlas and find out in which continent that country. And you have to write it up. If you take the case of Bhutan, you can write it down as the continent Asia. The second thing, capital. The third, neighboring countries. You can say India and you can say China. China to the north, India to the south. Right like this. Important water body. You have to look in Bhutan, is there some important water body? If you ask me the important water bodies of India, you can say you have Ganga up to a certain extent. Okay, you have Brahmaputra. Okay, so some important water bodies like that. You have to look in the atlas. Are there some important uh, water body or important terrain like Himalayas, etc. in Bhutan? Write that down. And why in? That means Bhutan you have completed. Similarly, if I ask you different countries such as Pakistan, Iran, you have to follow the same thing. The advantage of this is that when you read, you will be writing this in that map work of yours. So that will get updated. By the time you complete 1 year, trust me, almost all the news or almost all the countries which were discussed in the current affairs or which comes in news will be covered by you. So what happens is that whenever you hear a news, for example, you will be hearing some news in TV regarding Bhutan. Immediately, your mind will go to that place in the map. Say Bhutan is located that place. So we have some neighboring states to that. So if some problem happens in Bhutan, you will understand which area in India it can be affected. Similarly, Nepal. Similarly, each country. So make a habit of having a atlas. Okay. If possible, I will be sharing you some copies of how you can effectively keep the map work. Okay. I will be sharing some photos of it to your mentor. The mentor will be sharing to your group. So make a habit to have a map work. It is extremely important. Okay. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
out. So can I continue? Okay. So Bhutan shares border with four Indian states of Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, West Bengal, and Sikkim. Okay. The second, nested in the Himalayas. That means a major part of the Bhutan is in the Himalayan part. Okay. And what is the main importance for India? Bhutan serves as a buffer state between India and China. Buffer means two strong powers of China and India. In between, we have Bhutan. So the conflict part between these countries are avoided by because there is buffer in between. Okay. For India, why Bhutan is very important because it is a rich source of hydropower and a market for Indian produce. Okay, so it's a rich source of hydropower. I have already discussed to you how hydropower is important. India gets cheap hydropower from Bhutan, and also the different producers of Indian goods are sold in Bhutan. So that is why in Bhutan is important for India, and also a politically stable Bhutan is important to India. Otherwise, you have to understand the terrain of Bhutan is hilly and treacherous because so much of trees, etc., are there, forests are there. So what happens? Anti-social elements or political activities which is against the government, they will be having camp there and they will, entertain violence against the states, especially of Bhutan and in India. The politically stable Bhutan is needed for India to control such menaces. That's why Bhutan is important for it. And why India is important for Bhutan, you have to understand India is Bhutan's largest trading partner. India has high number of investment in Bhutan. India is a customer for Bhutan as far as hydropower is concerned. And majority of the income Bhutan gets is from this hydropower. So for Bhutan, India is also important. And transit of good, I have already told you that Bhutan is a land-linked country. That means it do not have direct access to sea or water body. So whatever Bhutan want to send, it has to go through India. Because in the northern part with China, the Himalayas are there and it is difficult to send product through there. In India, comparing to China, the borders are a bit more good, so it is efficient to send products through India. So for Bhutan also, India is extremely important. Okay, am I clear?
Yes.
So what are the issues faced between India and Bhutan? The first one is accusation of meddling into the internal affairs of Bhutan. Because the young generation of Bhutan now find it that India is interfering too much into Bhutan and its foreign policy and its internal politics. So they say that India is acting as a big brother. So they have to stop that. That is a discussion which is happening, especially in the younger population of Bhutan. The camps of military outfit, as I've already told you, in Bhutan, the terrain, especially, the forest and all, there are camps of different military outfit which is causing problems for India's security as well as for Bhutan security. Hydropower, I told you, it is an area of cooperation, but recently there is also issues in hydropower because Bhutan criticized India that India is squeezing or making use of Bhutan and getting hydropower at cheap prices. And there is protest going on in Bhutan too, saying that the price should be increased because India is having undue benefit with, the hydropower. So it is an area of cooperation as well as area of issue also. And another important area which came into news in the last 1 or 2 weeks is because China is claiming areas such as Chumbi Valley and Doklam as their own. Okay, it is actually a tri-junction between India, Bhutan and India. So we always say that whatever discussion related to this must be done in a trilateral way. That means it should be done in such a way that both the parties of all the three countries be involved. But the news which came in the last week was that regarding Doklam and should be valid discussion between Bhutan and China is going on, and that has affected India. And it is believed that India is discussing that with Bhutan, but it doesn't come in the news that much. Okay, but it is an area of concern between India and Bhutan. Okay, am I clear up to now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I think you are clear somewhat with India and Bhutan relation. Now some assignment. Okay, make a habit of doing this. Otherwise, trust me, if you do these assignments on a continuous basis immediately after the session itself, trust me, in the long process of 1 year, your current affairs and your basics will be extremely thorough. Trust me, you will be ahead of your peers by at least 10 to 20%. So make it a habit to do the assignment along with it. India Bhutan trade statistics. How much hydropower is being taken by India? How much trade is happening between both the countries? Okay, what is the number of students of Bhutan is living in India? So have a statistic of India and Bhutan. And I told you hydro power projects. Just know at least 2 to 3 major projects between both the countries, between India and Bhutan. So whenever a prelims question or a mains point of view, when you're writing an answer, examples enriches your answer. So just then try to name 2 or 3 major projects between the countries. That is the 2 assignments. Another assignment will be related to India-Japan relation. I already told you about India-Bhutan, and I have given you a template of how to do. First, you should know what is the why the India-Japan relation is on news. What are the areas discussed? What is the history between India and Japan? Areas of cooperation, areas of conflict, or issues, and what is the area? What is the way forward between these two countries? So the same way of how I told you about India-Bhutan, develop an answer or develop a note about India and Japan relation. So this is the 3 assignment from this art. Am I clear up to now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So the second most important article of the last week was Indian space policy. So the Union Cabinet, why this is in news? Why in news? Because the Union Cabinet has approved the Indian space policy of 2023. So what is the Indian space policy of 2023, or what is its objective? Objective to enhance the role of Department of Space, boost activities of Indian Space Organization, that is ISRO, missions, and give a larger participation of the research, academia, startup, and industry. This is a altogether objective of Indian space policy. I have given just for your understanding. You need not study, by heart all those things. I will tell you what areas are important for prelims and for mains. Okay. The first and foremost thing you should understand, India now do have a space policy. Okay. And the space policy, what we are doing is that we have ISRO, which is the major research organization as far as space is concerned. So its powers and functions are differentiated into different areas so that it works efficiently. Okay. To have a larger participation of research, academia, startup, and industry. Because ISRO, in the past, we can say up to previously 3 or 4 years ago, it was one institution which dealt with everything related to space. Now, different small institutions are created. For example, they delineated the roles and responsibilities of ISRO, the space sector PSU, NSIL, New Space India Limited, and Indian National Space Promotion Authorization Center in Space. Okay, these 3 are the main components of Indian space sector. And by this mission policy, they have delineated the roles and responsibility of each of the 3 institutions. That is the main highlight of the Indian policy. Okay, and by this policy, what happened is that it allows the private sector to take part in space activity. Till now in India, the role of private sector in space is very, very less. Have you heard the name Elon Musk? Have you guys heard?
Yes.
Elon Musk.
Yes.
Hello? Somebody has unmuted them.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Elon Musk, what is his major initiatives? Let me hear from you. He's one of the richest men in the world, right? What are his major initiatives or his major function, major, contributions? Recently, if you see, he bought Twitter, right? It was in news because he bought Twitter. He's famous for a car called as Tesla. But you know the major income source of Elon Musk is something called as SpaceX. That means he is one of the leading person, or his company is one of the leading areas of sending satellites and major initiative to the outer space. His rocket is one of the most powerful of the whole world. Trust me, that is a private person. That's why he is that much rich also. If you take the case of India, the role of private player is very much less. So seeing these things, India has now decided that it is high time the private people come into the picture for the development of India's space. One thing with the public and private thing, you will discuss as, or you will understand as the time goes by. The public sector or the government very seldom or very less look for profit. The main focus of government will be social development, not profit. But for private sectors, what they will look is for profit or benefit. That means they will be a bit more accountable, a bit more profitable when we do what is. Okay. So, this space policy of 2023 allows the private sector to take part in end-to-end space activities that include building satellites, rockets, launch vehicles, and the data collection and dissemination of the same. This is a very important thing for Indian space policy. This directly can be asked for a prelims question. For UPSC prelims question, what happens is that you might get two sentences, statement A, statement B, or statement 1 and statement 2, and the options will be option A, only one, option B will be only 2, option C will be both 1 and 2, option D will be neither 1 nor 2. And this statement can directly come to you as one of the statements. And another can be, you can say, the Indian space policy comes under the Department of Finance. They can ask sometimes. The statement can be wrong. They can ask if it comes under Department of Home Affairs. Such UPSC asks. So this statement is extremely important as far as UPSC is concerned. Now, going further with Indian space policy, we already discussed that it delineated the roles and responsibilities of ISRO, NSIL, and space. Now we have to know in what way. The first one, the strategic activities. The strategic activities related to space sector will be carried out by NSIL. That means the space sector, the important strategic activities needed for the development of space sector will be carried out by NSIL under the Department of Space, which will look in a demand-driven mode. According to the demand, they will work. Previously, you have to understand ISRO single-handedly done all these work. Now, the activities related to space sector will be carried out by NSIL. In space will be an interface between ISRO and non-government entities. That means, for example, if another country, or a private player want to develop a rocket, developing a rocket by private paper, we can give the powers, but there will be some regulations too, right? There will be some basic regulations of the, things used in the production, the taxes, the license sometimes. So that will be done by the government entities, okay, or especially it will be given by ISRO. So a connecting link between the government entities or ISRO and the non-government entities will be done by InSpace, or it can act as a facilitator. That is the role of InSpace. ISRO, which used to do majority of the work, will not now do any operational and production work, because this main work of operation or strategic activities has been moved to NSIL. This will be the major thing which look after the production work of space sector, etc. Now, ISRO will be focusing its energy on developing new technologies, new systems, especially on research and development, coming up with new things, new ideas, etc. That will be the major theme of ISRO. But the operational production work for the space sector, like building rockets, building its components, etc., that will be done by NSIL. The connecting link between private and government interface will be done by InSpace. Okay, that means the operational part of ISRO mission will be moved to the NSIL. That is the strategic activities. That means ISRO's mission, for example, Gaganyaan, Mangalyaan, whatever the projects are which are present in ISRO will be moved to NSIL. So that is the main highlight of the new space policy of India. Okay, this is extremely, all the 3 lines, these 4 lines is important for UPSC. Each can be asked as a statement. Sometimes what UPSC do is that they will change this thing. They might give the strategic activity related to space sector will be done by InSpace, and for this InSpace, NSIL will be given. NSIL will be the interface between this paper organization and NGOs. 2 statements will be given, and you will be asked to find out the correct option. So these 3 are important, and also the other statement is also important. Okay, so I will be giving some assignment to this as well. So the assignment is regarding find out in detail of the roles and powers of InSpace and NSIL, and also find out of ISRO as well. Find out in detail. A small, when I say to find out a note, don't assume that you have to find out 3 to 4 pages of note. 1 paragraph or a half a page of note will be enough. Of InSpace and NSIL, it is sufficient. You have 3 to 4 points. That is enough. Okay, so that is regarding the assignment. Okay. Any doubt? Any doubt?
No, sir.
Okay, so we will take a small break for 5 minutes. Okay, just to refresh yourself, drink something, some liquid, and come back. Okay, we will be having just 5 minutes break. Okay.
Okay.
In the meantime, if you have any doubt related to whatever we discussed, do leave a message on that. Okay. So what do you mean by a monetary policy coming? See, in economics, there is something called as a monetary policy and there is something called as a fiscal policy. Okay, listen. For you to travel to next place, you need to use bus, right? Or you use a car or you used to use a bike, or wherever you go, there is some form of money involved, right? To just understand you are in this session. You must have involved some money to pay for the fee. You must have used some money to recharge your mobile phone. You might have spent some money to buy your mobile. That means whatever happens in the world, some form of money is involved. Okay? So you have to understand how this money is being regulated in India. So there are two ways of the money supply is regulated in India. I will give a brief intro of it. Further detailed explanations will be given until and unless your economy session starts. So there will be two policy. One will be, monetary policy, and other will be fiscal policy. The fiscal policy will be one which is governed by the government. The finance ministers and the connected ministers will be doing. The other one, the monetary policy, which directly deals with the amount or the number of money in the market, will be done by RBI or the central government of a bank. So here, so monetary policy means it will be by RBI. So why the monetary policy committee was in use? Because RBI recently came up with something called as the repo rate of the last fiscal, or called as the benchmark rate or repo rate it is called. So it is given out by RBI, and inside RBI a committee called as Monetary Policy Committee discusses or comes out with the rate. That is called as Monetary Policy Committee. The further details of the powers and functions of RBI, Monetary Policy Committee, Finance Ministry, etc. will be dealt in the economic classes. Here I will be giving a brief intro of Monetary Policy Committee. Why I have selected this topic is because I've told you whenever a news of RBI, Finance Minister, Supreme Court comes, consider it as important. And this thing, the committee having 6 members, was asked previously in a UPSC question. I forgot the year, but there was a question regarding the number of members of the UPSC Monetary Policy Committee. Okay. So what are the powers of Monetary Policy Committee mean? The Monetary Policy Committee is entrusted with the responsibility of deciding the different policy rates such as MSF, marginal standing facility, repo rate, reverse repo rate, LIF or liquidity adjustment system. I will give a small idea of what do you mean by a repo rate. See, when you go to a bank, you can get a loan, right? You will be having an interest rate of. You have to understand from where do the bank have the money. Repo rate means it is the rate at which central government lends to the bank. For example, consider the State Bank of India. State Bank of India took 100 crore from RBI. So State Bank of India has to give interest to the Reserve Bank of India. And Reserve Bank of India will give a policy rate or rate. Consider, I forgot what is the exact rate. It will be in and around 4% usually. So just understand, SBI has to give 4% of interest to RBI. So that is the repo rate. That means if they are taking 100 crore, 4% of 100 crore has to be given to RBI as interest rate. That means, trust me, after 4% of 100 is gone, the remaining amount will be available for SBI to lend to its customers. So what SBI will do? SBI will charge a higher percentage than this to its customers as loan. What happens is that whenever this repo rate is being increased, the amount of money available with the banks reduces because they have to give a higher amount to RBI. So the banks will be having less amount of money with them. And when they have less, what they will do to have more profit, they will increase the interest rate to customers. That means if I or you go to a bank for a loan, the interest rate will be higher than the previous rate. So what happens? There is a high chance that I might not take a loan. And the amount of money in the market reduces when the repo rate increases. So this is a way used by the RBI to control the amount of money or the liquidity in the market. So just understand, a simple definition of repo rate will be the rate at which the central bank lends to the other banks or the private banks such as SBI, Union Banks, etc. Reverse repo rate, liquidity adjustment facility, MSF, you can Google and understand. Otherwise, it is better you wait till economic classes to cover this because this is a bit complicated. These all have connections. These are all policies by which RBI control the amount of money in the economy. That is one thing you have to understand. When they increase the rate of these things, the money supply in the market actually reduces. So this is only thing you have to understand now. Otherwise, it will become complicated. So next comes the committee have 6 members. Okay, there will be no government officials in this member. These members will be from RBI. Okay, and the officials from among itself. The government will have a say in its appointment, but the members will not be any government officials. Okay. Then the term monetary policy in the Reserve Bank of India's policy pertains to the deployment of monetary resources and risk control for the purpose of achieving GDP growth and lowering the inflation. Then another thing, what is the major function of RBI? If a question like that comes, understand controlling the inflation rate. Controlling the inflation rate is the primary function of the Reserve Bank of India. The Reserve Bank uses policies such as MSF, repo rate, reverse repo rate, LAF, etc. to control the inflation rate and also to achieve the GDP growth. Okay, so the Reserve Bank of India, actually there is an act called as the Reserve Bank of India Act of 1934, which empowers the RBI to make the monetary policy. Am I clear? Any doubts?
Clear, sir.
Clear, sir.
Okay, the MSF etc. will be detailed in the economic classes. Okay, just understand what is policy, because what they do is that every fiscal they will come up with a policy. Okay, if the inflation rate or the economy is having high inflation, they might increase the repo rate. If there is no such issue in the market, they will keep the rate stagnant. So use of this repo rate, they actually control the inflation and the supply of money in the market. So that is why MPC was it. Next comes the most important thing called as the foreign trade policy. So the new foreign trade policy, the last actually was completed 2 to 3 years back, but it was extended for another 3 years. So now a new foreign trade policy is being developed. So why it is in news? The Union Minister of Commerce and Industry. So the trade policy comes under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, Textiles, launched the Foreign Trade Policy 2023, which came into effect from April 1, 2023. Okay. So the policy is based on the principles of trust, in partnership with exporters, and aims at the process of re-engineering and automation to facilitate ease of doing business for exporters. The foreign trade, by the name itself, suggests export. That means what we have to get, like for the country to develop or the country to benefit, there should be export. What do you mean by export? That means we are sending the good products and services outside. Import means we are getting the products inside India. Which is beneficial to India? Import or export? I'm asking you guys.
Export.
Export, right? Import is needed. I'm saying, but as much as we import, we have to shell money back to other country. Our country will not be developing. When the export increases, that means we are sending more things outside India. We will be becoming rich and we are becoming more powerful. So the process of foreign trade policy is to have trust and partnership with exporters and to increase the ease of doing business for exporters. So more exporters will come, more export will happen in India, which increases India's economy. So what is the target? This is one area which is extremely important for UPSC. This is important because there can be an option saying that this foreign trade policy of 2023 is the first trade policy of India. No, it is not the first trade policy of India. It is the latest trade policy of India. Next most important thing, they can ask you the target. The government aims to increase the overall exports to 2 trillion by 2030. UPSC can give you the same statement as a statement in one of the prelims exam. They can change this 2 to 3 trillion. They can sometimes have the time limit. They can change to 2050 and give. So you have to understand the aim of the government is to have 2 trillion of overall export by 2030 with equal contribution from merchandise and services. Sometimes to confuse you, they can ask that the government aims to increase the overall export by 2 trillion by 2030 with contributions only from merchandise. It is not so. It is with merchandise as well as service sector. Okay, then the government also intends to encourage the use of Indian currency in cross-border trade. It is another development. Okay, so these 2 points are extremely important because what is the present system is that when we export and import, we often deal with dollars because it is an internationally accepted currency. So we used to do the transaction, especially in dollars. So the foreign policy of India presently discussed with 2 main things. The first thing, to increase the ease of doing business, to increase the overall exports to 2 trillion by 2030 for combined merchandise and service sector, and also encourage the use of Indian currency in cross-border trade. Why this became very much important is because of the present Russia-Ukraine crisis. Okay? In the Russia-Ukraine crisis, India is finding it really difficult to have relations with Russia to fund, especially when we buy different things from Russia. The USA have different sanctions. So the transaction with the dollars becomes difficult. India is evolving ways to have the trade with Indian rupee and Russian currency. Okay, so that is why now India intends to encourage the use of Indian currency in payments. So this is the main highlight. So what are the main salient features on a quick note of the export policy or the foreign trade policy? Target of 2 trillion of export by 2030, which includes services as well as merchandise. Continuous and responsive framework with no end date. Making rupee a global currency. That means the transaction will be mainly happening to rupee payment. Making India a trade hub. Digitization, faster processing of applications, because by doing this, the ease of doing business increases. That means to have a business, presently, a business to happen in India take a long time. If any of your friend, any of your family member are into the business, you might not. First you have to go get the permission. The site has to be, they have to come and supervise it. There are different clerical processes. It will take minimum 2 to 3 months for the applications to actually be submitted and it is given as a reply. So digitization, faster processing of application, businesses will start very fastly. It will increase the ease of doing business. Amnesty for shortfall in export obligation. That means some export company will be having some targets. If they fail in any of the paperwork or anything, there will be an amnesty scheme for them. That means they can solve the issue with minor fines and all. Okay. Restructuring Department of Commerce, our 50% reduction threshold of recognition of star trade houses. Star trade houses is the recognition given to different trade houses. Okay, according to the level of production, according to the level of export, there will be different stars. 1 star, 2 stars, 3 star, 4 star, etc. So recognizing those will have different benefits for them. Okay, the government will be providing benefits. So there is a recognition to that also. Okay. So this is the major salient features. Okay. Now what we will do, there is one, actually, we will discuss the newspaper. Okay. So there is an article, an editorial actually. There was an editorial actually of now can you see the newspaper?
Yes, sir.
Oh. So this is how I already introduced you guys to the newspaper, right? I don't want to waste too much of time in the newspaper. Get you familiarized. Today we will be reading an article. Okay, so as we move forward, first and foremost, I have already told you that you have to start with the editorial. So this is the editorial. And in the editorial also, the most important part will be the left-hand corner, these two parts. Okay. So the editorial, beyond customs, the government must find innovative solutions to help people with rare diseases. Based on that, I have given you one of the important news as rare diseases. Okay, read that. Long on intent. That is one article which is dealt with foreign policy. Okay. Long on intent, the aspiration of new foreign policy themes. From this is actually, if you read this one and you read the aspiration of new foreign policy, this heading itself you what is the area which is discussed in a newspaper. Okay, what is the summary, or you can say a heading of what are you going to discuss. So majority of the editorial in the left corner will be having two sides actually. If you see, there will be two paragraphs, right? One paragraph and the second paragraph. There will be two paragraphs. So in the first paragraph, what happens is that the information will be given. So what is with the foreign trade, or what is the aspiration of the new foreign trade? That will be given in the first paragraph. If it is some other article also, in the first paragraph, which is this one, will always be the information or the doc or data available with this news. The second paragraph will be basically the analysis of this policy. That will be the basic way of an editorial in your newspaper. So today we will be reading this or having a quick reading of this newspaper article, and we will discuss how to select or how to highlight the important places and how we can write a note. The first sentence, India's long delayed refresh foreign trade has finally been unveiled. The new foreign policy announced on Friday by the Union Minister of Commerce, Industry, Textile have made bold to set an ambitious target of reaching 2 million. So this is the target. So what we have to do, that is an important statistic we know, because it is the target. The slide also have shown this, it was highlighted, the target. Okay, so that is one thing we have highlighted it. Okay, so it has an ambitious target of reaching 2 million or 2 trillion in total exports of goods and services combined by 2004. Next, as we go forward, we read the government currently is estimating exports to have crossed 760 million. These kind of statistics, it is not that important for us. Okay, to understand the statistics of each fiscal year, it is extremely difficult. If you are an economy optional student, it is better you write this. Otherwise, it is better to leave this kind of statistics each fiscal. Rather than we know the we have to understand what is the target, and we know that India has not reached this target also. That knowledge is sufficient. Then, as we move out downwards, the policy projects a near tripling of outbound shipments and services over the course of 7 years. Okay, that means by 7 years, when we complete, our plan is to get 2 trillion. Okay, and one compares the growth goal with the 75 expansion of the last year since 2016. The magnitude of aspiration suggests bolting ambition. This means that this 2 trillion of export which we are planning is a very big ambition. To be sure, the last 3 years have been unprecedented with COVID-19 pandemic, then with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That means what happened in the last 2 years, why India did not reach its ambition, was because of one was COVID and other one was Russian invasion of Ukraine. So, for if you write an answer in the mains, when you write an answer why our economy did not, or why our trade did not came that powerful, you can state two reasons. One was COVID-19 and one was Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Since the last 3 years, when India put its trade policy reset on hold, also provided the policy makers a unique opportunity to take a fresh approach. That means, because of this reason, India did not come up with a new foreign policy in the last 3 years. Okay, since last 3 years, we were extending the last trade policy and came with the new one only now. Okay, the end result is long on statements of index. The National Trade Facilitation Action Plan, for instance, lists aim to achieve that are essential and now laudable, but in no way novel. Improvement in the ease of doing business through reduction transaction cost and time, the reduction cargo release time, and a paperless regulation. This thing is extremely important. This is another target of the National Trade Facilitation Action Plan. Okay, you can say this policy or trade facilitation action plan, it can be a part of this foreign policy itself, okay, or the trade policy itself. So what are the main two issues dealt with? That is reduction transaction cost and time, and the reduction cargo release time, and a paperless regulatory environment. In the slide when we have discussed, we have told as the paperwork reduces, the ease of doing business increases. So that is what is happening in the Indian trade policy. The second comes the analysis point of view. So why did India came up with this foreign trade policy? In a note to India's WTO obligations, the shift from incentives to an enabling regime of duty remission exemption scheme to facilitate the duty-free imports required to boost export had been near front. That means, according to the WTO or World Trade Organization, there are certain guidelines of how what trade is happening. That means in that, we should not do activities which are distorting. Trade distorting activities should not be done. That means we should not do any activities in India that affect trade globally. So just understand, we are exporting wheat. Just understand the international price is 100 rupees and we are exporting it on 50 rupees. So that can distort the market as such. You have to understand, if one is exporting wheat at 50 rupees, that person should get profit. Otherwise, he will not do that. To get that profit, sometimes government can give them money or government can give them undue incentives so that they can sell the product that much in less amount. Such kind of incentives are actually banned by WTO. Rather than that, other initiatives of duty remission that they can give you that if you export this much quantity of wheat, then we can give you a remission on your tax, or we will give you less taxes for that. So what people will do, they will try to export more quantities so that they can get benefit. So that is the way India is now coming up with, facilitated duty-free imports of inputs and enabling region for duty remission. That means there will be benefits when the tax is paid. For example, if I'm paying 10% of tax to the government in exporting, if I meet the criteria of sending or criteria of exporting, which the government gave me, if I exceed that, government might reduce my tax from 10% to 5%. So I will get a profit of 5%. But the amount which I send the product outside will not disturb the market. I might be selling for the international price of 100 rupees for wheat. After selling, my tax amount can be deducted to me. So that is a profit for me. But I do not, distort the market also. Okay. So these are some, schemes in which government support the exporters. Okay, remission of duties and taxes on exported products, rebate on state and central taxes, export promotion of capital goods. These have been around a while for the policy has just seek the terms of implementation to improve adoption. These were on the paper before also, okay, but they have changed it a bit, okay, so that the people can get used. See, the name is of remission of duties and taxes on exported product. I will export the product first, okay, for the same amount, paying same amount of tax. After I reach the the target given by the government, then my tax will be given back to me. It will be refunded to my account. Okay, so that way people will not do activities which distort the market. Then we have a rebate on state central taxes, advance authorization, export promotion capital goods. For these are you do not know, or you should not study the detail of this project, okay, because it is not needed for you, please. Just understand the different these things, but for an improvement in ease of doing business, reduction cargo release time, this is important for us. But for prelims and for general studies, such kind of intoward or technical activities we do not. Okay, so we can just understand what is that is enough. Okay, then in the key sector of apparel and clothing, for instance, the facility of self-declaration has now been offered across the board. This is an example of how these things work. Okay, that means a self-declaration. Previously, for self-declaration, it was not there. Rather than that, we have to give a declaration of some maybe some officers will be there who will come and declare that it has met the stipulated condition. But now self-declaration is enough. And self-declaration, when you give, if there is some issues found in future, the blame or the government will come hard on you. Actually, if your self-declaration is wrong, then a one-time amnesty has also been offered, giving exporters more time to avail both these schemes. Okay, amnesty means whenever the target is not met, whenever the deadline is not met. Okay, for example, if you take the income tax, or for example, there was recently the linkage of Aadhaar card and PAN card. Government will give a deadline for this. If you have not done by that time, the government sometimes give you an amnesty or some time to get okay with it or do things in a correct way. Okay? So based on that, for the exporters also, the things are like that. Okay. Then the policy devotes a complete chapter to promoting cross-border trade in digital economy, including most effective the establishment of dedicated e-commerce export hub. So another area of interest or another area in which our the foreign trade policy falls into is promoting cross-border trade, especially in digital economy, including most facilitated the establishment of dedicated e-commerce export hub. For e-commerce hubs, you can say there is Amazon, there is Flipkart, etc. So now the policy of exporting this thing also is under the purview of the government. Okay. And so in the key Western market, the FTP for offering more substantial and security target measures as well as the rest for reports. One thing we have to understand is that this is from this, if you have to write it down in a note, is that you can write the head, the new foreign trade policy. The first one, target. You can write in target, you can write these this point. Along with this, the additional points, you can write these two one. The National Trade Facilitation Action Plan have two more points, which is to increase the ease of doing business through reduction in transaction cost and reduction in cargo slippage, because these all helps in the trade. Then issues in the foreign trade of India. First was with the COVID-19 pandemic. The second was the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Then some schemes in which by which the government exports, boost export. And you can give the 4 examples. No need of so much of explanation of these points, but just write the points. First one is RODTEP. The second one is SCTL, then EPCG, then AA. Then areas in which the government is going to stress on now, because these are the new things actually. The previous thing was there, we are just giving a push to it, but newly what the government is doing, the government promotes cross-border trade and also e-commerce export. So this is how you should analyze an article. Similarly, if you read this article also, customs also, government must find innovative solutions to help people with rare diseases. Okay, that is another issue. Rare diseases, I have told you, are diseases which is not affluent in the society. For example, COVID-19, you see there are so much of people with COVID-19. But take the example of AIDS. There are not be so much of people affected with AIDS. That is a rare disease actually. So rare diseases are such diseases in which less number of people are involved. So as less number of people are involved, what happens is that the market will be small, and the private players or the manufacturers of medicines won't be that much interested in investing in money in that area. So people will suffer. So that is how you should approach editorials. So here this foreign, because in the last 1 week when we analyze, majority of the articles are a kind of specified article, sometimes related to space, sometimes related to environment. Whenever I come up with a general topic, okay, especially of polity or economy, a general topic, I will again come up with newspaper and again I will read one article and I will show you how to analyze. So by doing that, you will understand, you will get better as the session moves forward. One thing you have to understand that I think most of you guys have seen the interaction with the civil servant and the in Wednesday. What he told, this is a process actually, right? Initially, when you read newspaper, initially when you start with newspaper reading, it will consume time. But if you are regular, if you take the newspaper every day, trust me, in the process of 2 to 3 months, the time will drastically come to half to 45 minutes. Okay, so that is one thing. Now we will move back to the slide. So World Bank was in news. Why? Because World Bank came up with the growth projection of India. So what does World Bank do? The World Bank is one name which every time comes in news. In 1 week, at least 2 to 3 times, the name of World Bank will become. So what is World Bank? World Bank was created in 1944 as International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. See, any idea why reconstruction and development is given, especially the name of reconstruction is given? Anybody? Any guess?
After the
See, 1944 was the time of World War, right? By the term World War II entered, especially in Europe and North America, there was huge destruction. Actually, the World Bank started for the reconstruction of these areas. That's why the name came as Reconstruction and International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Okay, along with IMF that we will discuss as the session goes by. The IBRD later became the World Bank. Actually, the World Bank is one bank. Actually, it is a group of 5 institutions, and one of the assignments of for you guys would be to find out the 5 institutions of World Bank group. A group called as World Bank Group. There are 5 institutions. Understand the 5 institutions. So World Bank as such, you have to understand, is one of United Nations. United Nations is a international governmental organization. Okay, is one of United Nations specialized agencies. This you have to understand, because in UPSC an option can come. World Bank can be a specialized agency. World Bank, an arm of the United Nations, different statements can come. But World Bank is a specialized agency of United. So how many members it have? It has 189 members, and we have to know as India is also a member. So how does the World Bank work? Okay, the World Bank is a bank in which there are shares by different countries, and the voting rights, everything depends upon the number of shares. So in World Bank, the largest shareholder is United States of America, followed by Japan, Germany, United Kingdom, France. This is the follow. India, China, etc. comes very last. So the largest shareholder is United States. So just understand, when the largest shareholder is United States, the majority of the decision will also be influenced by United States. That is one of the drawbacks of World Bank also. I'm just giving a brief idea of World Bank because we don't need so much of in detail of World Bank. Okay. So some of the assignments you should understand regarding World Bank. The one thing I told you, understand the 5 institutions of World Bank Group. Okay, 5 institutions of World Bank Group. Understand the major report of World Bank, because a previous year UPSC question was, okay, a report was given. There were 4 options to it. Actually, that report was published by World Bank. To understand the major report of World Bank, there was a report called as Ease of Doing Business, which they have stopped now. Okay. Then 5 institutions of World Bank. Then understand one difference between IMF. First understand what do you mean by an IMF. Okay, World Bank I have discussed what is IMF. Okay, what is the connection between World Bank and IMF, and what is the difference between World Bank and IMF. I will give a small intro to it. World Bank actually give money for developmental projects in different countries. For example, India want to develop a bridge. India want to develop education, health, etc. World Bank give loans and money. But IMF provide financial support whenever a country is having balance of payment crisis. That means that country is not having enough money to fund its trade. That means if a country is importing so much of good, and the country is not having sufficient money to pay back the exporters, that is called as a balance of payment crisis. At such institution, IMF provide loans. That is a major difference between World Bank and IMF. If you read newspaper, what is happening to Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka is having balance of payment crisis, and IMF is actually trying to help Sri Lanka. There are so much of issues connected with that you will study in your economics, okay, especially the functions of World Bank and IMF. This is enough just to have an idea of what do you mean by a World Bank, understand the major reports, major institutions, and the difference between IMF. Okay, am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Then comes LIGO India, which was in news today. Okay. It comes in science and tech. You can include that in GS paper 3 as well as in GS paper 2 because it is a government policy. GS 3 because it is related to science and tech. So why LIGO India was in news? The Union Cabinet on Thursday approved a project to build an advanced gravitational wave detector. This is an important area for UPSC. There are previous questions asked from gravitational wave, from LIGO, etc. Okay, so where does that come? It comes in Maharashtra at a cost of 2,600 crore. Okay, this is expected to be completed by 2010. So we told that it is a gravitational wave, right? It is a gravitational wave detector. So what do you mean by a gravitational wave? It is actually a ripple in space. It is an invisible but fast ripple in space. It is often caused by star or black holes, etc. These are things which happen in space, in outer space. Different, sometimes the stars turn quickly, and there is a force created there. Okay. A wave is created there, and it travels across the universe. It won't be visible to our eyes, but these detectors like LIGO can detect it. Okay. The gravitational waves travel at the speed of light. Just you can switch on the light and you can see how fast it travels. Similarly, the gravitational wave passes. These waves squeezes and stretch anything in their path as they pass. That is how they are detected. In whichever medium they passes, it squeezes those areas. It causes a ripple. That's how gravitation wave happens. The gravitational wave was initially previously told by Albert Einstein, a person way back. He has mentioned there is a wave called as gravitational wave, or there is a wave which affects the universe. And this person, after that, who came up with studies of gravitational wave, even got the Nobel Prize. So it is a very important part of science and technology. So, what is LIGO India? This will be built by the Department of Atomic Energy and Department of Science and Technology in India. Okay, it is a collaboration of Indian institution and US observation. Understand there are mainly 3 LIGO observatories, 2 is in United States and 1 is to be built in India. Okay, that is one thing. So India is actually not having that much technological know-how of this project. India will be developing the side, and the main LIGO product will be given by United States. You have to give money, and they will be giving the main LIGO product. Okay. The observatory will be third of its kind, made to the exact specification of the twin laser interferometer wave observation in Louisiana and Washington. That means in USA they are having 2. Similarly, we are having the site of 1, and the machinery or the that interferometer will be given by the United States of America. Okay, that thing we don't need that much. Just understand in which ministry it is, under Department of Atomic Energy and Department of Science and Technology. Understand how many of there. They might ask you, India is the first country apart from USA that is going to have a LIGO observator. That is right. India will be the third country. India will be the second country after United States to have LIGO. Okay. Then this is how the things look. It needs huge area actually. Okay, huge area is needed. Flat area is needed. It should not be a terrain like a mountain or a plateau or thing. It should be straight. Okay. So to find out a place for such an observatory spanning around 3 to 4 kilometers, it is difficult. And now India has found out that in where in Maharashtra. Okay. So the project involves constructing a network of L-shaped arms, each 4 kilometers long. Okay. Why this is 4 kilometers long is because the ripples being created has to be, sensed. So a 4 kilometer long, then only it can detect the small, because the gravitational wave, you have to understand, it happened way far, maybe in some stars and all. Because by the time it reaches Earth or nearby Earth atmosphere, it will be really, really feeble. To find that, we need that much strong interferometer. Okay, the construction of such a large and sensitive device. Of course, it is a sensitive device and it's a large device, and it requires an extremely flat surface. So terrain is important. This line is important for UPSC. They can ask you, it will be underwater. In option of UPSC, the question will be, the LIGO will be underwater. It will be the top of mountain, top of plateau, etc. There will be course. But for LIGO, it requires an extremely flat surface because it requires large area and the device is also a sensitive device. Okay. The strongest source of gravitational force are among the enigmatic subjects of our universe, especially a black hole, neutron star, supernova, even the Big Bang. These all can be reasons for us observing gravitational waves. Okay. The discovery of gravitational waves and 3 US scientists the Nobel Prize in 2007. Understand which are the, that is your assignment, and find out which are the 3 US scientists which got the Nobel Prize in 2007. Okay. So the assignment, understand who got Nobel Prize for gravitational force and what are the major studies done by them. Because from the studies you will get UPSC question. Then understand Einstein and his contribution related to gravitational waves. And also the theory of relativity. Don't study in detail of theory of relativity like a physics student. No, just a basic understanding of theory of relativity of what it discussed, and Einstein and his contribution. Okay, so that is what we are discussing in current affairs. Any doubt?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, so these are the important current affairs which we are discussing this week. Okay, I hope you guys have a an understanding of it. So we have 5 more minutes. If you guys have any doubt, you can ask me. Otherwise, I will give you some suggestions of a map work. Okay, I will list down some countries in the chat box. Take out a new book, buy an atlas and do it. Okay, and do the thing as I have already told you in the class. I will give you some examples. A photo of some example will be shared to Gautam or to your concerned mentor. He will share it in your group. Okay, any doubt? No doubt. The list of important current affairs will be shared to your group. Okay. If you guys need the slide, do let me know. Okay, I will share the slide also if you guys need it, and also the list of important current affairs. Do make a note of it. Okay. So those things which are not discussed in the class, make a habit, read and understand, because those areas you can Google and find it out. Okay, when a relation is discussed, for example, when I is discussed about India and Bhutan, similarly, in the same way, you have to find out relationship between India and Japan when the current affairs come, India, United States when the current affairs come up. Okay, it is up to you to have a dedicated note of it. Okay. Any other thing? Or else we will wind up today's session. The list of important current affairs and the map work to be done this week will be shared to your group. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Then thank you. If you have any suggestion or feedback, do let your mentor know it. Okay. He will direct it to me. Okay.
Okay, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.